Oh, good afternoon. It's Sunday. Just thought I'd do another bit more work on the Westminster. To let you know, it's a bit of a mistake on my part. The clip you'll see after this will revert back to Friday evening, and it will jump straight to the starter motor having the rear bush already pressed into the casing. I made a mistake and accidentally deleted the section of the video of me installing the bearing. You didn't really miss a great deal. It's just me pressing the bearing in the vise into the end casing of the starter motor. So that's why it jumps from Sunday back to Friday night. So what I thought I'd have a look at today, while I've got a chance, is just have a quick look at this exhaust manifold that I got a little while ago. The studs, they're not too bad, but you can see they've started to rot and thin out where they get near the flange on the exhaust manifold. And what I don't want is, I've already run a 5/16 UNF die up these, and the threads have tied it a little bit, but I know what happened. This will be installed in the car. It'll have all nice new gaskets, and the gasket that on these is complete with the intake manifold as well. So if any of these break, trying to drill it out while it's in the car is going to be a right pain. And then, because obviously the gasket's already been crushed, ideally I'd have to take everything back off again and replace the gasket, and the gaskets aren't cheap either. So while it's out, we'll see if we can easily heat these up and get them removed. What I've done, like I said, is already run a die up there to clean the threads, and that's something else. Hopefully you can see that in the shot. Not just about. This is called, it's made by a company called US Pro. It's not particularly expensive. I think I may have paid somewhere between £25 and £30 for it. I got it on eBay as usual, and what it is, it's an Imperial or American tap and die set. And these, it's okay. I mean, it's not top quality. You could probably do a lot better, but it helps me out. And of course, with these old cars, old British cars, everything is pretty much Imperial. Well, it will be. It's all old sizes. So when you get stuffed, threaded holes and you have to drill holes to run to re-drill and things like that, these are really handy. I think that you only really get the finishing taps. You don't really get the starters and the intermediates, but they are good for at least cleaning up old threads if you need to. So, well worth a buy. Back over there. So we'll need the blowtorch, hopefully. I'm just a bit wary, I guess, heating up cast iron. I will probably have to warm up the corners a little bit. I don't want to put all the heat into the stud because it might get soft and just shear off. So let's see how we do. So what we'll do, I've got the two 5/16 nuts, the fine thread. We'll just do the old trick of locking two nuts together. Hopefully, he says. There we go. We'll lock those two together. Lock those together. And when we come to undo it, obviously we'll use the rear nut because that'll push against the nut that's locked in front of it, and hopefully it'll unwind. So I'm going to try and get some heat into this corner, a little bit into the stud, and see how we go. And again, safety. Wearing our gloves. I'm not going to be making any sparks, so I'm not going to bother wearing goggles. There's no point in that. Let's have a look. or shears off. Get that out of the way. It isn't liking that. It's not going anywhere. A bit more heat. Let's try locking those nuts off a bit more. To weld the nut on the end of the stud. So we're going to go welding a nut on the end of that stud. I've just cleaned up this nut just with a wire wheel and a soft pad on a disc. So we'll just weld that. We'll try and weld that nut to the stud, because I tried it again, locking the nuts together and heating up a second time, but it didn't work. So we shall weld them together. Hook it onto the stud, so I'm not too worried about the stud. Let's just have a pair of snips. Check the shroud is cleanish. Should be right. Let's give it a go. It didn't cut in then for some reason. Oh, this isn't working now. My machine isn't set very well. My visor's not cutting in quite as quick as it should do, I think. Giving me a bit of a sparks in the eyes. It does have it. I'll give it a tiny bit more. Should have it. Right. To leave my mask outside, it's solar panelled. I think the battery might be down. Right, let's heat it up some more and give it another try. Go. Right, it's going. I'm not going to force it, I'm going to put some more heat onto that. And we have success by welding the nut to the end of the stud. Well, it's not very nice welding, but it worked. I was able to retrieve or extract the stud from the manifold without damaging it and without taking the threads with it either. But I did have to keep warming this up and doing a couple of turns, and then when it got tight again, warm it up again. So yeah, just have the other two to get out and see how we go. And there it is, got all the studs out. I did have to recut the threads with a 5/16 fine tap. It's a little bit of thread damage. One of the studs did try and take the threads with it, but only partially through the hole. So yeah, there it is. I got them out, which is great. So no need for drilling and tapping. Right, I'm away for the next week, so hopefully some more videos next weekend. See ya. Right, back to the armature again. This is obviously it's not clamped very tight. Obviously, you don't want to start squashing armatures too much because you'll misshape them. So it's only just pinched. But what I did find, the reason the bush didn't fit is because there was a very, very small step on the end of the shaft. You could just feel it. So all I did, nothing too heavy, just some 1200 grit wet and dry. Pretty much what I did with the commutator as well. Just put a tiny little bit over it, just pull down, keeping it away from the copper windings, just pulling it down so it's just rubbing on that edge. Bit this way, a little bit more just to show you what I did. Just blew it off with some cleaner, a wipe. There we go. There we go. So now our be careful not to bang it onto there. There we go. She fits. So there's no need for reaming or anything like that. It was just a very small step in the end of the shaft that the bush slides onto, and it feels like there's still a little bit of free play, but a lot less than there was before. I'm not going to change the bush in this end of the casing. The reason being is I'm not sure how much punishment this casing would take if. So just putting a little bit of this bearing grease. Haven't drowned it, just a little bit. And then we take the armature. Closing the grease up first, because we don't want to get any grit and dirt in the grease tub. And take the armature. Just carefully feed that through the bush without smashing into it. There we go. That should slide on nicely. With individual pieces. Start off with this piece first. Actually, I'm sorry, there are actually two pieces there, just so you can see. So that one goes on there. I know that it's clean, I'll just check, there's nothing in there. Slide that on there, hopefully. There we go, that goes on there. I'm not going to be putting any grease on this part because, as far as I know, these are supposed to be kept clean. Because of all, if you grease this up, there's obviously dust and things coming from the clutch, and that can all end up making it very sticky, and it could all end up here and sort of chag up this mechanism. So as far as I know, these are just supposed to be clean with either petrol or paraffin when you take them out. There should really be no need of any lubricant on here. Take the spring. Like that, and then we've got the cap for the other end of the spring. So I'll just pop that down there, and the drive gear, so we pop that on there. It goes that way round, so it holds the spring in, caps the spring like that. So we have I said before, just showing you there, we have the Bendix. I'm not going to be putting any lubricant of any kind in here, because as far as I know it should be kept free moving, otherwise it could become sticky. So that needs to go on. And that will line up with the teeth on here, hopefully. I'll get it in the right position. There we go, that slides on. As you can see, that would slide like that. And there's our spring that goes on the end. It goes this way around, and you can see there's a recess for the circlip to sit in. Sit on there. So what we need to do now is situate the very Heath Robinson compressor just making sure you can see what's going on there. Yep, you can. I'm doing a matte green tonight. I'm actually using different types of spanners. These are 17mm nuts, but I don't have two 17s, so I'm actually using a Whitworth spanner as well. So there's one for matte green there. So I've got the spring compressed now, pretty much as far as I need it to go. Maybe just do a touch more. Probably about as far as it's going to go. And that's revealed the slot for this circlip or clip ring. Well, might as well just put you around there so you can see. Right, it definitely was easier to get that circlip off than it was to get it back on again. As you can see, that's how the circlip needs to sit. What was happening before, it was actually sitting slightly outside of the recess when the spring was fully released, and it's because the circlip, obviously where I'd opened it up a little bit, it wasn't quite circular anymore, so I had to adapt this obviously rather Heath Robinson press, but I had to file a couple of slots either side of the hole, allowing me to hold the pliers and keep pressure on the split ring as the pressure was being taken off the spring as it was coming back, so it would actually sit inside its recess. So that's how it should look. So you should hardly see any of the ring or the split ring, just a tiny little gap there. The slot in it, you can see. So that's in finally. So now we'll get the yoke put back onto the armature. As you can see, I showed you the other day, it is quite in good condition in there. And this starter motor, just so you can see, and if you can see on there, I'll just try and get it in focus, you can always tell the year or the type is an M418G. You can probably maybe just see that there, and the year is 1971. So obviously it's not original to my car, because my car is 1965, but the engine isn't original anyway. So I always like the smell of something about the smell of old motors. This funny sort of smell, electrical smell. Let's see what's like that on there. Obviously we have these brushes on attached to this side of the carrier. You can get replacement ones, but they do have to be soldered in. But these aren't too bad. They've lost a little bit, but not too much material. So put a tiny little bit of bearing grease in the bush. Not that. It's copper slip. what I'm doing is just taking a bit of this high temperature bearing grease, just putting a tiny bit around there, a little too much, just a little bit, just to give it something to work with. It's got something on there. And we'll have to hook them out of the way with the scriber. Probably have to physically hook them up so we can get the brushes in. He says. Over. So. I will get this right one day. There we go. Just that one. And the other one. So they're pre-fitted in there like that. So I think the idea is we have to hook the springs out when we want to slide the brushes in. So we'll hopefully slide that end case on now. Just hook the brushes out of the way. Again, as a guide, you've got the little noggin on the side there, and that lines up with the slots for the noggins are the same both ends in the yoke. So he says. That should be right. Make sure that's clean, which it is. No debris on there. That's right. Could be me getting this wrong. Fiddly. It was easier to take something apart than it is to put it back together again. Right, finally we got it in, or the front end cover anyway. Hi there. So yesterday evening I was working on the starter motor. I got it pretty much together, but we've come across a problem. So we have the new bush. Let me get that in there. The new bush is fitted in the casing there, and what the issue we have now is when everything's bolted together, as it is right now. I just nip these up a little touch so they're tight. The armature barely wants to turn, which is not good at all. But when you loosen things off, just loosen the screws a little bit, is perfectly fine. I have a feeling when I took this to pieces before, I practically had to remove this part from the armature. I had to put it through the vise and kind of slide hammer it off, which is not normal really. And in the bush there is quite a lot of, you probably can't see that, I can see it from here, there's actually quite a big step where the armature is obviously worn into the bush at this point here, which makes me wonder whether the armature has always had an issue. It may have not been picked up on, and of course the first few times it was cranked over, it just probably wore that material out of the bush, and that's why it works. But obviously now there's a fresh bush in there that's parallel and has, you know, is the right tolerance, it doesn't want to spin, which makes me think there's a possibility that this armature may be slightly bent or is out of true somewhere. So there are, you can find new old stock armatures, which I'm looking into doing because I don't want to throw any of this away because it is all still usable. The only other thing I could do is probably try changing the bush in this end, but I really don't think that's going to make any difference. So unfortunately the starter motor is a non-go at the moment. It's back in the box there, partially put together. So I'm going to try and get another armature for it to see if we can get it to work with that. If not, it will have to be a complete replacement. But it just one of those things that goes to show when you're restoring cars, you don't know the history of things and how they've been treated. It doesn't always work out. Right, what I thought we'd have a look at now, seeing as we didn't have as much success with the starter motor, is the water pump. And I was going to see if we could probably try and, or hopefully get it apart to see if we can rebuild it. You can buy new ones of these. They're not mega expensive, but they're not cheap either. But I have seen reconditioning kits for these, but I've never had one apart. I've got to take the fan off. Well, got to take the fan off. I want to get the fan off anyway because I don't like it very much. And if the water pump turns out to be scrap, things like the fan could potentially be sold on eBay. Obviously, you probably can't find too many of these anymore. So let's have a look. It doesn't look very good, does it? It's pretty nasty. So I've never taken one to pieces. I'm assuming you can get them apart somehow. Let's have a look. Blimey, that actually came undone. I thought that was going to be really, really tight. Some are going to be tighter than others, I'm sure. Oh. Right. Time for the heat gun, I think. Heat gun. Very handy piece of equipment. Hopefully you can see that. For dealing with tight bolts or bolts that have been tightened for a while. Just make sure. A while since I've worn these. Make sure there's no hibernating wasps inside them. Just a heat gun so I can start that. Safety. Before I get complaints from people on YouTube. I'm making sure there's no hibernating wasps in the glove. It has happened in the past. Get stung on the end of your fingers. So I've got the gloves on. Don't bother with goggles, we're not making any sparks. There we go. Let's see how we get on. glove or a pair of pliers. There we go. That's one fan removed from the water pump. If this is going to work, and if this is the way, and if this is the way you take it apart, let's find out. Because I really don't know. So that's on there. Seems to be reasonably central, not 100%, but too loose and wobbly. Just see what happens. What do I need to? Let's see now. Easy thing to hold on to. Is there any movement? Or am I just damaging things? Much movement so far. What I'll do is I'll try and give it a bit of heat, try a bit of expansion, see if that helps. It's been on there a long time. Heat is always an okay to give assistance, I guess, considering we're going to rebuild it anyway. So if there are any sills or anything in there, if they'll be knackered by now. So. another try. I'll have my gloves on this time to save any getting burnt. Let's see what happens this time, see if we get anywhere. Going the wrong way. Going the right way would help. Snug fit. Oh. Wow, they are tight. It's better if I know how I clamp the pump though. It's not so easy to clamp it without possibly damaging it. Try moving it to the vise. So I've got it in the vise. Let's give it another try. See if it'll budge. I'll keep my gloves on because it's probably still a bit hot. Let's see if it budges. Ooh. Oh dear. Right, well, that didn't like that too much. Looks like I've broken my pulley. Whoops. Right, obviously then maybe that's not the way they come apart. Scrap. Yeah, great. That's obviously not the way to do it. Bugger. Looks like we'll be buying a new water pump and a pulley. Oh dear. Oh well. They do come with pulleys attached, so there's no major dramas. So it looks like reconditioning that is a no-no, unless there's another way of doing it. Oh well, had to give it a try. Well, I did get a nice fan out of it. There we go. Does anyone want a fan? Well, after the unsuccessful attempt to strip the water pump and obviously the disappointment with the starter motor, we did get something productive done today. We got the rest of the valves in the head with all the collets and collars. I've gone along with the mallet and given them a thump and seated all the collets, and now they have their spring clips in the top. So now this will be essentially bagged up and put in the house. All the ports will be blocked, protected as much as possible from any contaminants, ready for the rest of the engine to be built, which, as you're aware, is over there. So we've still got a bit of work to do yet, but I did want to show you something for people who are interested. I should be able to do that from here. These books, this is a BMC service parts book. You can also get the factory manuals, which are really useful. They do vary in price. They do vary in price depending on condition. You can pay anywhere between £50 to £70 for one of these books in particular, and the factory manual you can pay anywhere between £15 and the same sort of price, £50 to £60. It all depends on condition. But these are really, really handy, because especially the parts book, because in this book is pretty much every part or service part that is part of the Austin A99 and A110 Mark 1 and Mark 2. Mine's a Mark 2, but also the other variants of the car. You've got the Wolseley as well. I don't think this obviously covers the Van den Pla, but there's probably a lot of parts in that car that are very similar to to the A99 and the 6110. They're basically, you know, they are the same vehicle, just different panels, different interiors, except for the 4 litre, of course, because that had the Rolls-Royce engine in it. So yeah, these books are really handy. Pretty much everything is in here, if you can see that, but you have exploded pictures of the engines, all the different types of pistons and piston rings, and all the part numbers. I paid there we go, there's the exhaust and all the different parts that you can see that you probably can't get anymore. And these interesting brackets. I think I've seen one of these for sale on eBay before, and it was about, I think it was about £70. So you can just see all the stuff that normally doesn't survive on the car. But it's interesting to look at, and it gives you an idea of what is supposed to be there as well. I mean, the factory manual probably shows you quite a lot of this as well, but this is handy so you can actually get your part numbers and cross-reference. And like I say again, it shows you what should be there if anything's missing. And the reason I actually found this very handy the other day was with the starter motor. There it is. Sorry about my cameramanship. I wasn't sure if there should have been a spacer between the end of the commutator there, or the end of the armature, sorry, like a sprung wash or a shim, and the brush housing, because I thought when I stripped the starter motor down that something had come out of it. I heard something hit the floor. It may have just been coincidental, but I wanted to be sure, because this is the very same starter motor that I've got. So I could look in here, see the exploded drawing, and think, oh no, there isn't anything missing. It must have been obviously something else that hit the floor. So it's just very handy for those instances where you're not sure about things. I think this also, yes, as well. Obviously I could find the correct solenoid as well, and someone had actually written in, I think, the new number there. I think that might be for the newer square looking version, not the round one like that. But it does have the original numbers, and I was able to obviously cross-reference those numbers and get the solenoid I needed. So these books are very handy. If you can come across them, it's well worth a buy. If you are restoring one of these cars, or any car for that matter, if you can get an original factory manual or parts book, it does make your life a bit easier when you're restoring. At least you've got an idea of what should be there if it's missing, and if you can't obtain the part, at least you can obtain something like it, an equivalent. So hopefully we might crack on with some more tomorrow. See you later. Bye bye.